Keith Engle here, the TGI Sports Talks weekend of Playbook. Jack and Keith's weekend of Playbook. Lots to talk about today. NCAA basketball, baseball opens up. Who knows where we'll go? We never know where we're going to go. And I'll introduce my co-host, the immortal Jack Hirsch, Michael Spink's biographer and all-around sports guru. There's the book right now, Michael Jinx Spinks. I'm a little better than halfway through, and it is an excellent read, guys. An easy read, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. There's hard reads and easy reads, and this is an easy read. Jack did a great job with this book.
Yeah, I'm glad, Keith, you mentioned you didn't mean it in a derogatory way. You immediately nipped it in the bud. Well, you didn't give my thought process a chance to get going, So I'll attack you a little less on the sports show today, and we do have a lot to talk about.
Does that sound like a derogatory term when I say an easy read? And I'm talking about for myself, because there's reads, right? I mean, people talk over your head. You don't. You talk to the layman. I like it. Great job. And we'll talk more about Jack's book, because I have it here too, and I'll be pushing it as we keep going along. I love Jack's book is by my side until it's gone, until I'm done.
Thank you.
Jack, lots to talk about. NCAA basketball. Listen, this was an interesting night last night. I mean, we had two really tight games. We had a game that got tight at the end. We had a big blunder by Nebraska in their game, but Illinois, to me, is the big winner of the night. They played good basketball against Houston. They played a total basketball game against Houston. Their defense was better than I've seen them play or advertised, and their offense was good. And Houston just couldn't put the ball in the basket. They shot like 34%, 28% from three. Not a good night for Kelvin Sampson's Houston team. And Illinois looked the best of. Well, Arizona played well. I shouldn't say Arizona played probably better than Illinois, but I think the big winner last night was Illinois.
Arizona's the one top seed where everything is going to form, where they're completely dominating. And they dominated the John Kalahari Arkansas team that we thought would at least be competitive with Arizona, and they really were. And Calipari's never taken such a bad loss in an NCAA tournament, to my recollection. Until further notice, I think Arizona's the favorite to emerge from this tournament. But as we can see, anything could happen. And kudos to you, and shame on me. I dismissed Illinois' chances against Houston going into this game. And I remember saying on the show, I thought Houston was going to win by double digits. Illinois was just tough off the boards. It wasn't just Houston's poor shooting.
No.
And it just seemed like Houston never got out of the gate in this game. They never really seemed to get going.
I did say Houston would pull this game out, so don't give me too many kudos. But I did say Illinois was dangerous, and if Houston went long stretches without scoring, which they did a couple times during this game, partly because of their own poor shooting, as you said, but Illinois, to me, showed a defensive effort that I hadn't really seen from them in the past. Great job by.
And what you were alluding to, Keith, a little while ago with Nebraska, the controversy. That's towards the end of the game when they only had 4 men on the court at one point. Now, I'm not sure what the rule is. I was under the impression the referee had to tell them that 5 have to be in. That's the impression that I was under. Did the officials miss this momentarily as well, and then they couldn't really stop play once it began?
Yeah, I'm not sure that rule myself. I'll have to check that out. But they could have missed it as well. I don't know how you miss a guy missing. It's only 10 guys. In football, there's somebody always counting, right? And when field goals and whatever, you always see guys counting how many guys are on the field. So you don't have, especially in big games.
If everyone fouls out of the game and you only have 4, you play with 4. Well, that's just the way it goes.
There's a famous scene in Hoosiers, if you remember, which I understand it's fictionalized in a way, but there's a famous scene where they played with 4 And the referees did point out to Norman Dale in that movie that he got 4 in a coach or on the floor. And he had 1 player left, and he wouldn't put him in the game. He said,
leave it to you, Keith, to use a 1948 example as a model for 2020. It's approximately 1948. I'm not sure the exact year.
I like to think I'm at least as old as you, Jack. That's all. It's a great example.
I wasn't at that game.
But listen, this wasn't inconsequential. There's only 58 seconds left in the game. It's a 1-possession game, and they give up an easy dunk because they got 4 guys on the court, and this is not going to go away, soon. People are going to talk about it.
And I wonder whether the players on Nebraska who were on the court were aware there were only 4 of them. They must have been.
Oh, somebody
must have been.
Somebody can count to 5. I mean, I got to believe in major sports. Somebody can count to 5.
Kudos to Nebraska's coach. He took responsibility for, he put the blame on himself, which it should be, because the coach should be aware of what's going on. But listen, mistakes happen, breakdowns happen. Unfortunately, it happened during the worst possible time for Nebraska, and they don't move on. But Nebraska did win an NCAA tournament game. So as disappointing as this loss was, at least they take something out of the tournament. There was a story on ESPN, Keith. I didn't get to read it yet. The most painful losses of all the teams in this tournament. That's an interesting question. Who does it pain the most? And not Nebraska, because they did do something they hadn't done before. They won a tournament game. But you look at some of the teams, like Houston. This had to be a brutal loss for them the way it went.
In the moment, I think all losses are brutal, right? But I think when Nebraska reflects, and as you said, they didn't just win an NCAA game; they got to the Sweet 16 for the first time ever, and they're a football school. 2 football schools facing off in this game last night, which was kind of interesting, and it was a fun back and forth game. It was a really good game. They didn't shoot the ball terribly well in this game either, but. I like back and forth games and close games at this point, obviously. And Nebraska just comes up a little short. I think they'll reflect on this season as historic, obviously. How can it not be anything but?
And what I mentioned the other day with Indiana, you look at some of these universities whose claim to fame in sports has been their football team, and have certain basketball programs caught up to the football program in the university, like Nebraska, for example. Could we say at this moment basketball really would be as popular in Nebraska? The Cornhuskers basketball team is opposed to the football team. We said that with the Indiana Hoosiers. You could make an argument that that's their favorite team right now, the state of Indiana, the football team, as opposed to the basketball team.
Yeah, I guess if you said, you probably woke somebody up who'd been in coma for the last 40 years or something, and you said Indiana is a national football champion, and Nebraska and Iowa are playing for a chance to get into the Final Four, or somebody would say you're nuts, right? Because it's backwards. That whole thing is backwards. So, but it's fun. It's fun to see, and that's what the tournament's about. The Big Ten is rolling, as Brian said. Purdue wins a really good game against Texas. Texas gave them everything they could handle. A lot of back and forth in this game. A last-second tip-in to really win the game. It wasn't a buzzer beater per se, because there was still less than 1/10 of a second on the clock. But for all intents and purposes, a buzzer beater. Purdue plays a little bit. They play a little more balanced basketball than I think I gave them credit for. They don't shoot the ball necessarily maybe as well as Arizona does. But I think this is going to be a great 1-2 matchup on Saturday with Arizona and Purdue. Purdue, their guards play really well. They got 2 big men inside where Arizona is really strong as well. I think this is a really good matchup. But got to give kudos to Texas and Sean Miller. Giving them all they can handle when they were one of the last teams to get in this tournament.
Texas had a slight handle on this game, and it looked like they were going to pull off an upset, but their big men got into foul trouble. They had 4 fouls, 2 of their big men with about 6-7 minutes left in the game. And when you're 1 foul away from fouling out with that much time left, you become less aggressive. And one of the big men fouled out, and we saw at the end of the game the tip-in under the boards. because they didn't have any big man to bounce out, box out, grab to rebound. And that's what Texas really lost the game, getting to foul trouble the way they did. But you talk about fouls at the end of the game. Texas is down by 3 points, and they get a 2-point basket and get fouled, make a 3-point play as a result, and tie the game up. Some of these foul calls, one player could back right into another player, and they call a foul to the guy on defense. I don't understand that rule.
You saw that one?
You shouldn't be able to initiate a foul, meaning that you're the one that aggressively hits into the other player. And what's he supposed to do? Like take 2 steps back?
I think you're maybe specifically referring to the 4th foul on the Arizona. I'm sorry, the Texas big man. I can't think of his name right now, but the same. He didn't have the ball. I mean, he was just trying to position himself.
No, on Purdue. On the foul on Purdue at the end of the game at 11 seconds.
Oh, they're talking about that game. Yeah. There was a play though when you talked about the big men getting the 4 fouls. The 4th foul on. Gosh, I wish I could remember which guy it was for Texas. The Purdue big center was backing in on him. He didn't have the ball. He was just trying to position himself in the lane. And the announcers even alluded to the fact that Purdue is very good at what that guy just did. He finds a way to get position, get the guy hooked under his arm, and it makes it look like the Arizona guy fouled him.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Texas guy fouled him. And that's ticky-tacky.
Yeah, but you just said it, how it looks. I feel some of these officials feel they're under the microscope and they feel pressure to call a foul because they hear the crowd noise and it gives a certain impression that one player is committing a foul when he's not really doing it.
Yeah. I think there's some of that. You're getting screamed at by the crowd, getting screamed at by the coaches and the players and everybody else. Trayvon Marks has a great game for Texas in this game, by the way. He did everything he could, scoring when he scored 34 points, I think, last night. 29 points in 34 minutes. Shot really well, hit some big shots all over the court and helped. He did a great job of trying to keep Texas in this game, along with the rest of the team. But Purdue's kind of deep, very balanced scoring attack. They play good defense, and they can even – for a Purdue team, I'm not used to watching run the ball. They do have some speed and breakaway potential in the right moments, and I like this Purdue team. Matt Painter is an underrated coach. He's gone out in some bad losses in this tournament in his career, but he got to the Final Four. He got to the final here just a couple of years ago, and
now Purdue is playing Iowa.
Purdue will play Arizona next.
Arizona, and Arizona. I'll tell you, they're the one team that hasn't even been remotely challenged in this tournament so far.
They have not. This will be an interesting game. Right now, it's kind of a toss-up for me. I like Arizona to get to the Final Four, so I think I'll be picking them to win this game. But I think it's going to be a much closer, obviously, than any other games that Arizona's played. They shot 64% from the field last night, and Kentucky was out of this game almost from the very beginning. Kentucky couldn't get into their flow. Calipari says during I hate these interviews while the game's going on, by the way. We'll talk more about that in baseball in a second. But they interview him while the game's going on. He says, we may have to start calling some plays. Like, they don't even have plays. They just get Acuff going, and they kind of riff, and they couldn't get into their flow. Acuff got off to a bad start, a slow start anyway. And I feel like Arkansas never was in this game from the opening tip. Maybe the only game that was really, I guess the Houston game wasn't really close until the end either. But you had 2 great games here. And you mentioned Arizona, Purdue, but you got 3 teams in the Big Ten, as Brian kind of alluded to a second ago, in these 2 regional finals on Saturday. You got Illinois and Iowa now matching up, which is you got 1 and 2, and now you got the outliers a little bit, 9 and 3 playing each other as well.
I know Illinois is 3rd ranked, but are they a bit of a Cinderella team? Iowa's the biggest Cinderella team perhaps left in this tournament, but could a team who's seeded 3rd ever be labeled Cinderella?
No, they shouldn't. Again, it's tough for me to say even Iowa's a Cinderella. They're not a basketball power, but they've been to Final Fours. They've had really good basketball teams through the years. You go back to, sorry, I'm going to give you a dated, not back to the 40s, but Lute Olson coached there before he went and had great success at Arizona, had really good success at Iowa, got to a Final Four. They've had good teams through the years when other coaches came through there as well. Steve Alford, Fran McCaffrey, they just couldn't get over the top. And
I guess when you talk about the Cinderella teams, we have to talk about them only at the beginning of the tournament. The absolute long shots like Siena.
True Cinderellas that as we think about them historically, right? But again, I guess if a 9 seed is getting to the Final Four potentially in Iowa, I guess we have to consider them a Cinderella. They weren't expected to get there, but I don't like the term because it's not, in my mind, historically accurate. Arizona, by the way, when we were talking about their game last night, they had 6 guys with 14 or more points. Another very balanced.
Yeah,
I like the way they approach this team, and Tommy Lloyd's a really good coach too. His name's got to get. A lot of these guys are up for jobs. There's going to be some jobs open. We'll talk about in a second.
You know what? When you're dominating the game the way Arizona did yesterday against Arkansas, it's a lot easier to be a well-balanced team that the ball gets distributed equally. But as you advance into the tournament, 1 or 2 players, have to step up. That's
a very, very fair point. Tonight's games. Tonight's loaded with great matchups too, great coaching matchups. As we talked about Monday and I talked about on the college sports huddle the other night. Let me get to the scoreboard here. So one of the first matchups we have tonight, I think it's the early matchup too. St. John's and Duke. Patino again. You got the grizzled veteran, the Hall of Famer in Patino against the rising star in John Shire. There's just a great storyline in my mind.
Well, John Shire should be established there by now. He's been there a couple of years. So.
4 years though. I mean, here's a guy, and I'm reading it yesterday. I think it was in The Athletic. You were talking about something you read on ESPN, and I check out the articles in both of these. And sometimes I think they write just right. So there was an article about who needs to win these games. You talked about somebody who would be the worst, hardest loss. They talked about what coach needed to win the game the most. And John Shire was ranked up there high. He's already been to a Final Four. I
think no. I understand where they're coming from. If I had to say one or the other, John Shire, it's a little more important than he wins this game than Rick Pitino wins it for St. John's, because we always talk about how the fan base looks at a team following a loss. St. John's had a darn pep rally for going to the Sweet 16. I don't think they had any pep rally at Duke. Big deal. They're going to the top 16. Who gives a darn if you're Duke and you get eliminated? If St. John's loses tonight, it would have been a good season no matter what. And guess what? If it hasn't been done, St. John's is begging Pitino to sign an extension. I mean, we've heard from Pitino before that this is his last stop. We heard it at all the different places he was. We heard it at, Iona. We heard it here. We heard it there. But, at age 73, St. John's really probably is his last stop, even though you never know. And if Duke loses, the season is a major, major disappointment, but not so for St. John's.
I disagree that it's not a major disappointment for St. John's. After getting bounced in the second round last year, this team and the way they're playing, expectations were high, not necessarily with the committee.
They passed the second round. They won in the second round this year.
I understand that, but is that enough when you've got one of the best coaches? You can think what you want. Anybody can think what they want of Rick Pitino personally or whatever. He's a great coach.
Caleb Foster is a key to tonight's game. He's going to be a game time decision. I always kind of wonder what they mean about these game time decisions, because it could mean a couple of things. One, it could mean he's not likely to play, but the medical staff is doing everything they can to get him ready to play because they badly need him. True, he might be a lot better than let on, but they make it, it's a game time decision, knowing he's going to play all along, but they're keeping it kind of, low key in that regard. And 3, it might really be a game time decision, but it's hard to believe they're not going to decide whether he's going to play till warm-ups, on the court right before, and then they're going to ask him. And most players who are competitors, even if they're not well, they're going to want to find a way to get out there.
There is an advantage to keeping the other team off balance, not knowing whether he's going to play or not.
Exactly.
Game plan for him. But to me, and again, Caleb Foster is a key to this game. If he doesn't play, I don't know that Duke can handle this full court pressure that they'll see a lot of this game that Pitino likes to play. But if he plays at 60%, is it going to be any better than him not playing at all?
He'll play point guard. He'll run the offense. Just being out there. He'll slow the tempo down when needed. He'll give him a certain stability.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think this is going to be I think there's going to be a few great games tonight. I thought that last night, and a couple of them weren't. But I think St. John's and Duke is going to be, even with Duke's, if Caleb Foster doesn't play and Duke's being banged up a bit, I think St. John's is going to win this game. And I do think it's important for them. Pitino wants to win here, and he's 73 years old.
Yeah.
He said this. He's not on, he's probably on a lifetime contract, because I don't think
my point is, which program needs to gain just a little more? And I think it's slightly more important for Duke than St. John's. Like I said a moment ago, because St. John's is kind of playing with house money right now. They fulfilled a goal of at least getting to the Sweet 16. Like I said, they had a pep rally.
Yeah.
I mean, if St. John's was the defending NCAA champions, I don't think they have a pep rally and they're all giddy about, getting to the Sweet 16. It's all over the newscasts in New York. Oh, first time since 1999. St. John's has gone to the Sweet 16. Like, it's already a celebration.
Yeah, well.
Keith, it's like you as a Yankee fan. When the Yankees clinch a playoff berth and they're pouring champagne over one another's head. I mean, you don't get excited about that, but in St. John's, they are.
Listen, I don't disagree with that premise at all. I do think it's important for St. John's, though, because of the expectations that Rick Pitino brings. They expect to be back in the Final Four at some point in his career. This is the best team he's had so far, and he's not going to get that many more chances. And again, these teams turn over. They got like a 85% turnover on St. John's for the players that were there last year. So I think it's important to both these teams. And I think St. John's wins this game, by the way, as far as predictions go. Your thoughts on the game itself?
I was picking St. John's all along. I hate to make a switch. I'm going to go with Duke. I'm going to do it. Not only because Forster, I think, is actually going to play and probably be at least semi-effective. I think the emotional part of things, with Duke, I don't want to say having a little letdown, but they're happy with the way things are going. I don't think St. John's is happy with the way things are going. I don't think Duke has any emotions the way things are going. I think they're looking at the big picture and what they have to do. And I know I mentioned red flags with Duke before, but I just don't like that Kansas game, the way St. John's blew the 14-point lead. They were lucky to win that game at the end.
We could say that about
Illinois. They were holding on. St. John's was holding on at the end. They really were.
And at the end, they found a way to get it done. So
they couldn't find a way. They couldn't even grab a rebound at the end of the game. St. John's off the defensive boards, and they were getting out hustled. They kind of fell apart, uncharacteristic for Pitino team.
Still came out with a W. So let's, I got.
Yeah, well, they had a cushion and got the last basket.
I want to revisit the St. John's legacy, if you will, too, and why it's bigger for Duke because of their histories, right? But St. John's is a pretty without the championships, right? But they're a storied basketball program here in the East, right? Haven't been for decades, obviously, as we've talked about. But I talked about the other night, Louis Carnesecca, one of the most revered coaches in basketball. And I don't mean this as any disrespect to Louis or St. John's, because he did a great job there. Got to a lot of Elite Eights when he didn't get to the Final Four, but he got to one Final Four and got blown out. And he's looked at a lot differently than somebody like Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, who was just ripped year after year for not getting further in the tournament, not winning the tournament until even after he won a tournament, he's still getting ripped for not.
There's a reason, Keith. Everyone loved little Louis Carnesecca. The media, how could you help? He was a likable guy. Jim Boeheim, I'm not saying he's not a nice guy, but he would get moody with the media. He kind of wouldn't know how to talk to them. And if you like a guy and you interact with them, it's a bit different. And St. John's had some very charismatic players on the Lou Carnesecca. You know, a good number of them went to the NBA.
He had a lot of NBA players come out of there, actually. And by the way, I wouldn't imply that Boeheim wasn't sure how to react with the media. I think he knew exactly what he was doing every time, everything he had to say, all the time. And it wasn't always nice.
No. Boeheim was halfway between Louis Carnesecca and Bill Parcells. He was kind of in the middle. He would be very edgy talking to the media. You could tell he was annoyed. He would say the right things, but his emotions were kind of high-strung. Louis Carnesecca, he would have it go at it with the media, but with Louis Carnesecca, you saw what you were getting. It seemed more genuine. And this isn't a knock at Jim Boeheim, who feels a genuine guy as well. Yeah. But with Louis Carnesecca, what you saw was basically what you got. And he was charismatic, Louis Carnesecca, something about him.
I agree. I can tell you his players loved him. I've interviewed a couple of them. Matt Brust I had on just a few years ago, and I still keep in contact with him on Facebook. And he, until Louis died at 99 here, just a few months ago, maybe it's within the last year, I think. He would have dinner with him constantly. And he stayed in contact with his players. I know a lot of coaches do, but Louis seemed to have a different connection with his players from what I can gather from the outside. Fun stuff, good stuff. Anyway, back to the games at hand. I got a little off track there. Alabama will play Michigan tonight, 1-4. So the seeds held up here. Michigan's loaded. Dusty May's done a great job. Alabama, would be the outsider here. Not again. They've never been to they've been to one Final Four with Nate Oates. He's the only coach other than Whip Sanderson ever to get them past the Sweet 16. And he only did it one time. He's a really good coach. His name is getting bandied about here. I think Michigan's just got too much for Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama with their distractions, we even wondered at the start of the tournament, would they get to the Sweet 16 with what was going on there? But
they played really well.
I would think Michigan would have enough to get by Alabama, but how strong is Michigan really? They played well so far in the tournament, but to me, they're a little bit of a question mark as well.
Both these teams have played really, really well, I think, throughout the first couple rounds of this tournament. Michigan State, another great coaching matchup in Tom Izzo and Hurley, two guys who have won national championships. This is Izzo's trying to get to his 9th Final Four. Again, another guy who's not going to be here a lot longer. He's in the 70s as well. This is a very interesting matchup, and I think Michigan State takes down UConn because they're playing good basketball at the moment, and I think there is a real thing called momentum, and they play this gritty kind of basketball that can take UConn out of their game.
And the biggest red flag with UConn, we might look at what they've done in the tournament so far. Well, they've won a couple of games. But look at the way they lost to St. John's, in the Big East tournament, and they lost decisively. They never made a run in that game. And before the Big East tournament, losing to Marquette, getting upset. I mean, how do you forget that with Connecticut? Because they win a couple of games in the tournament. We think back to Hurley winning back-to-back national championships. You know what's interesting, Keith, and I mean this in a good way. I wish you heard what you were saying this show a couple of times. You're mentioning the coaching matchup.
I love the coaching.
But that shows you what's happened to college basketball. We used to always mention the player matchups because we'd have these 4-year players, who would start, at least 3 of the 4 years for their teams. And this is what it's come down to.
It
But now
has
on
come
the
down
whole
to this.
team is identified by only its coaches.
You've got a point about the players, and we don't know the players like we used to. I agree 100%. But college basketball, to me, in my lifetime, has always been a coach's sport. It's always been in the Big East. We talk about the coaches forever. We didn't talk about the players as much. There was great players, yes. We talk about Pro Washington, but we talked about Carnesecca against Thompson and the Sweaters. We talked about Patino and Boeheim, and we talked about it's always been coaches against coaches in college basketball. Go back to Hal McGuire, my favorite coach of all time. He was bigger than the team itself, and a lot of these guys were. Bobby Knight. It's a coaches league or sport in college basketball. But you're right. I mean, you're not wrong that we don't know the players because they're not there in many cases, they're there at one program for a year. And then
when we get to really know them and look forward, like a Cam Boozer, to, just watching them, they're gone. They go to the NBA.
Or to another team. I mean, they just move to another program. So that's what happens. So I like Michigan State to win this game in a bit of an upset, not a huge upset here.
Same here.
I like Michigan State. And the last matchup of the night, Tennessee plays Iowa State. Again, I'll mention the coaches only because we've got another grizzled veteran in Rick Barnes, another guy in his 70s, against a young guy in TJ Olsenberger. Iowa State's played well all year, kind of stumbled later in the year, had some bad losses. Tennessee has come up small a lot of times in this very same position under Rick Barnes and other coaches. But I think this Tennessee team's a little bit different, and I like Tennessee to pull the upset, 6-2 upset tonight.
Yeah, watching Tennessee beat Virginia, I'm going to go with Tennessee on the upset, tonight.
Are we giving our wage away? We get excited about matchups.
I mean, I like Tennessee. I mean, the way they held off Virginia, they had to lead most of the game. Virginia came back at the end, and then Tennessee. But I forgot their point guard's name, but I loved the way he went to the foul line, getting fouled late in the game by Virginia, and he hit 4 shots in a row.
I think it's Gillespie is the guy you're thinking
of. Gillespie, that's right, Gillespie.
Yeah.
Now, I was looking at Gillespie, and I thought, I can't see him not getting drafted. He just looks good. But then again, you never know. I was high on Walter Clayton, who went to the Utah Jazz, and he's been hurt, but he was coming off the bench, and he really wasn't a big factor for the Jazz. So you never know how it transforms into the NBA.
Well, since we won't be back until Monday, you and I together, we'll predict the weekend's games as we see them. Obviously, we know 2 of the matchups, which we can start with Arizona against Purdue. Did we? I don't know. Did we pick these games? I don't think we did.
Yeah, Arizona, I think, wins this game big against Purdue.
I'm going to take Arizona over Purdue. I think it'll be a closer game than you do, I think, though. And I think Illinois, and I keep counting Iowa out, man. And McCallum's done a great job there in his first year. This team could never get over the top over a guy I like a lot in Fran McCaffrey. I think Illinois there's too much offense, and if they play the defense they played the other night, Iowa, as scrappy as they are, I don't think is going to stay with them.
Yeah, I like Illinois, and with Iowa out of the tournament, if that happens the way we both think it will, I think we should have a new term, who's the semi-Cinderella team left? We got
to call something else.
It might get so bad, we might say St. John's if they are getting to the Final Four.
There are 5. I guess you could call them a Cinderella. I mean, in a way. So the games we predicted for tonight, we'll pick the games assuming they win.
You want to know? I'm thinking Patino's full of it. You want to know why? When he was at Iona, he promised it was his last stop. It's easy to forget.
Nobody believes that.
Patino was thrown a lifeline by Iona. He was going to be out of coaching. If Iona didn't take him as a coach, for all we know, Patino wasn't going to get back into coaching. He certainly wasn't going to get a big job at a university. So he goes to Iona, and he kind of resets himself again and got the opportunity to get the St. John's job. Now Patino could coach anywhere he wants. But had he stayed with Iona, let's say Pitino thought, I own it to this school for giving me another chance. I have a moral obligation to stay with them. Let's say that was his mindset. I think Iona would cause real damage in the tournament at some point. It could have even been this year. Who knows?
They would have been.
And that would have been a true Cinderella story at some point. Iona getting to a Final Four if it ever happened.
They would have, and he put together. He built a good program there before he left, but they weren't going to compete. They weren't going to win national championships at Iona ever. They just weren't. They weren't. I mean, at that, and you're right. By the way, they did throw him a lifeline. He was in line for a job at Siena here at one point around the same time. So those were the jobs. Those were the only jobs he was going to get. Just
put things right before we get off college basketball. Hubert Davis was fired finally from the University of North Carolina. Why they didn't do it immediately is beyond me. Why they were having discussions with him? Discussions about what? Either you fire the guy or you keep him, work it out, unless you want to change things in the program and he's against it and you can't come to an agreement. But I don't know what changes. The only change is you win. You advance more in the tournament. And the talk is, are they going out of the box at North Carolina?
You have no choice.
Now, I joked, and it was only a joke about Isaiah Thomas going there. I was joking. I wasn't serious. That would be a fiasco. That would be a bad fit, put it that way. The one guy who I think you go out of the box for is Brad Stevens. If he wants to get back into coaching, if he wants to stop being president of the Boston Celtics, and he likes the college atmosphere more, and North Carolina is a very prestigious job, I think he would be the best candidate, having taken Butler, a little-known Butler, to back-to-back finals.
Remember, he hasn't coached in college since 2012 either, though.
He'll adjust. Guys like him adjust very
a lot different than it was in 2012. I think you're right. I think Brad Stevens would be the one guy that I'd want there, and whoever it is, I don't know how you're going to do this. He's got to commit and want to be a lifer, because they don't go outside the program. They haven't gone outside the program since 1958 when they hired Dean Smith when he was from assistant at Kansas. They don't go outside of the program, and now there's no candidates inside the program. Roy Williams handpicked Hubert Davis, and from what I've read a lot this week, Hubert Davis never even wanted the job, and it kind of showed in here. And Roy Williams' silence this week was telling, very telling. He gave no vote of confidence to Hubert Davis at all. He said, "I don't want to talk about the situation," is what he said. So I think that was a death knell for Hubert Davis. That might have been what the discussions were. They might have been waiting for Roy Williams to get his okay to say, "We're going to pull the plug on your boy."
Can you imagine the most famous alumnus of all, Michael Jordan, wants a challenge of coaching, and he's saying, I got all the money in the world. I want to turn this around. Let me be the coach. How could they say no to him? Wouldn't that be something?
There was one of these, blown up stories on social media last night where Michael's plane had just landed in Chapel Hill to discuss.
Oh, wow. Someone beat me to it.
I guarantee you that if he went there, it's to discuss who's going to be the next coach, and it's not going to be him. He's going to help. He'll have a say.
Committee, yeah.
Yeah. I think they'll have a full search committee, and, Michael will probably be part of it.
I also know Michael will probably write him out a hefty check.
Listen, talking about coaches too, we could have, you could still have several major jobs open up. North Carolina's open now. Kansas could open if Bill Self decides to step away. He says right now he's not, but I don't think it's a sure thing that he's back. Houston could open with Kelvin Sampson. He said last night, everybody's time comes, which isn't really.
But North Carolina is as appealing a job as you're going to get anywhere.
Kansas is as good as North Carolina.
Well, the alumni might be a little tough on a coach than at Kansas. That would be the only drawback.
For sure. And you got to have the resources. I mean, Hubert Davis, they have resources because Hubert Davis did a good job recruiting. He just didn't do a great job coaching. That was the biggest problem there. And quite frankly, he's probably relieved, but he didn't do an awful job. It isn't like he was out of the NCAA tournament for the last 4 years. He went to a Final Four.
Let's put you said it best. He didn't do an awful job, but he wasn't a difference maker. You know, some of these other schools, like we talked about Patino, he's a difference maker. Bill Self, I think, was a difference maker to a point. John Shire is a difference maker. Dan Hurley's a difference maker. Hubert Davis, you know, holds serve.
I've said a few times, I think one of the really big negatives for Hubert Davis was the fact that he's got the John Shire comparison, because they came in not the same exact year. Shire came in a year later. He's done much better than Hubert Davis.
Major League Baseball got started too. It kind of slipped under the radar.
Oh, we're going to get there in a second. We didn't predict these games that we from tonight. So St. John's and Michigan State would theoretically play Sunday.
Wait. You think St. John's? You're giving St. John's a win over Duke already? You got me confused, Keith.
Well, I was going to try to do the Sunday games. Maybe we can't really do them because we don't know exactly who's going to play.
You don't know who's going to. Yeah, I mean, if a player could get injured or something in the interim, even though his team might win, I don't know.
You're right. I will say, though, I'll give you my two final four teams from that side of the bracket is going to be St. John's and Michigan. St. John's and Michigan make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, I switched back to Duke, okay, as far as, you know, beating St. John's.
So you think they'll make it to the Final Four then, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I was going with St. John's all along, but now something, you know, I'm thinking of the emotions and everything. It's like I said, St. John's is kind of seems a bit satisfied where they are, and they can leave this tournament happily at this point, you know, even though I know they have bigger goals. But for Duke, it's the season's been a big disappointment if they don't beat St. John's.
And if we assume that, I think we both have Michigan. If we Michigan wins, I don't see Tennessee or Iowa State beating Michigan in the regional final. I think Michigan.
I agree. I agree.
So we'll follow up on all of that come Monday. But we did have opening day of baseball. I don't want to say it was lost, but first of all, I don't like the fact that I won't get on the whole Cincinnati Red thing that, you know, if they took away their traditional opening day 20 years ago. But the Yankees and Giants open up on Netflix. So we got yet another. By the way, you need to get about 6 subscriptions if you want to watch any game you want to watch throughout the year. To be able to watch Major League Baseball and maybe watch your team. But Netflix now is in the game. And the Yankees played well. Fried pitched well. But, you know, I can't take the production of the game means something to me. I want to watch baseball. I don't want to watch all these gimmicks these guys do. They're interviewing. I can't get over the fact that they spent an entire half inning interviewing Jazz Chisholm while he was playing second base. Come on.
Loosen up, Keith. Have more of a sense of humor. You're so high-strung, Keith. I mean, come on.
I can't have a sense. I could have a sense of humor if he got a line drive hit to him and he kicked it all over the infield while he was talking to
I can't believe it after watching your, what's the title of your show? The Unprofessional Professional?
Yeah, I said it then too. Well, I didn't
say it. Right. After watching you guys, you're offended over them interviewing a second baseman talking during the inning. Let me tell you what bothers me more in relation to something like that. Coaches who are interviewed at halftime, be it the NFL, college, or whatever. They want to get into the locker room, especially the NFL, to be with their team, and they have to stop and answer these questions. And you know what's revealing about how much they hate doing it? As soon as the interview is done with them, they're actually literally running to the locker room to get there. And contractually, I guess they have to do it. They're not voluntarily doing it.
No, you don't see any of them enjoying it. How about Calipari was interviewed during the game last night while they were playing? Come on.
I mean, you think he wants to do that? I could understand a baseball manager between pitches. Sometimes things are a little slow, even though I'm not crazy about it. But in basketball, where the pace is so quick, where every second counts.
Just go back to baseball and Jazz Chisholm playing in the game. So now here's what's happening. Listen to me for a second. Now the broadcast team has inserted themselves into the game. That's not what they're there for. They're there to tell me what's going on during the game, not insert themselves and talk to Jazz Chisholm during the entire bottom of the fifth inning or whatever it was. The Yankees were up by a lot. This isn't the All-Star game where you want to have those gimmicks, have them. But this is baloney, and I think the rest of the production was half-assed too as well. The center field.
I don't know which player they pick out. I don't know which player they pick out, but I can guarantee you this: Chaz Chisholm loved it. Loved being in the limelight.
I don't care.
The only possible drawback. Well, I'm going to agree with you, and I wouldn't like it if it happened. If it affected the play on the field, if there was a hard ground ball hit to the left or right, a Chaz Chisholm, and he was too slow to react to get it because he was talking to the people in the booth, then okay, I could have an issue with that. But he was having a good time. The part they asked him, what stadiums do you like your favorite stadiums to hit in? And he mentioned Atlanta. He says, oh, because I get a lot of hits there. You know, it's good stuff.
It's not good stuff while I'm trying to watch a baseball game. No. You want to interview him?
Baseball games are boring to watch on TV.
Oh, my
You
God.
got to fill in the gaps, Keith.
No.
You can't be that traditional. Ball one, strike one, ball two, strike two. Oh, he's holding the guy on in first base. The outfield's playing a little shallow for this hitter. You need more than that.
When did you become?
You need to talk about this trip like Phil Rizzuto. You love Phil Rizzuto, right?
I did love Phil Rizzuto.
He was talking about the lasagna he was eating the night before.
It's fine.
He had a big bowl of spaghetti.
I had
That's
white
why
mustard.
people loved them. He was
White
talking about
mustard.
the marinara sauce on it.
I had White and Messer to tell me what was going on during the game. When did you become Gen Z?
Wasn't charismatic. He kind of could be.
But I knew what was going on in a baseball game.
On that entertainment.
But I knew what was going on in a baseball game. I want to watch baseball. You know what I like about baseball is that it takes on its own pace, that it isn't rushed. It isn't, it's not for everybody.
TV, Keith, when you're at a baseball game, and I hate to admit this, unless it's a World Series game, a big playoff game or whatever, and I'm in the ballpark, my mind is only about 50% on the game. The rest is atmosphere. You're taking it in. You're talking to the person you're with.
Yeah.
You're not so attuned. I hate to say this, okay? TV's a little different. You need something to keep you entertained because you're not actually at the ballpark.
It tells me that they need to, they're trying to appeal to a generation that has the attention span of a gnat. That's what they're trying to do.
That's trying to appeal to young people. Sports has become a young people, entertainment industry. It's not like the grizzled veterans like yourself, Keith.
We got the money.
Going to every little thing.
They ought to be appealing to you and
Football, it depends on the sport, too. Football's different. We're intensely into the sport, the plays, and so on. But baseball is so much slower pace.
Doesn't need these gimmicks, though. It doesn't need that.
Well, the basketball itself is the biggest gimmick. It could be the NCAA tournament or the NBA. A slam dunk. The players are going crazy on the teams. Never mind that the other team takes the ball down the court quickly and scores. They're still thinking of how the ball was dunked. They're thinking someone made a statement or whatever. Because it's entertainment.
They're slowly just killing this game. They are. That's why I like baseball on the radio. I like baseball on the radio. I don't get all this crap, except John Sterling ruined it for me.
I'll just say, I'm not going to get into John Sterling. He was the worst talk show host I ever heard by far. By far. He was terrible. He was rude. But he was the best baseball radio analyst I ever heard. Play-by-play guy. The best. I love listening to John Sterling do the Yankee games on the radio. When I had to listen to the radio, I prefer watching TV. But so it's really in the extreme. One he was terrible at, the other he was great at.
I grew up with baseball on the radio, because we didn't have cable TV where, I would get like 10 Yankee games a year when I was a kid. So I listened to a lot of games on the radio, and I still like games on the radio with good announcers. And I don't think John Sterling would.
Well, Kate, the Yankee game was on the radio the other day. Have the TV on and put your radio on.
It doesn't sync up right.
Come on, you have that option of doing that.
I've tried it.
You know what John Sterling would say when he was a talk show host, and he was really, to me, he was the butt kisser, I thought, when he was a talk show host. I was rude to people, and when someone would nicely call him out on it nicely, he said, "Look, if you don't listen to if you don't like the way what I'm saying, don't listen to the show." That would be his response.
No, Chris.
And that's how he gets. Yeah.
No, we don't need cheerleaders, Chris. And Ernie Harwell was a great one. Don't compare guys like John Sterling to guys like Ernie Harwell. Harwell was great.
How much of Ernie Harwell have you heard? Come on.
Ernie
at least heard him. He lives in Detroit.
I tell you, when I was a kid, again, going to bed with my transistor radio, I could pick up Bob Prince in Pittsburgh. I could pick up Ernie Harwell in Detroit. I could pick up a lot of guys late at night with a radio signal, which kids wouldn't even know what the hell I'm talking about right now. But
yeah, the best baseball announcer, if I had to name one of all time, and all those guys are great. So in a way, I hate naming one, but Vince Scully, I think he would be the consensus choice. But part of it is Vince Scully was liked. You listen to Vince Scully, who could dislike Vince Scully? There was something about the personality.
Did games alone a lot too when he was doing radio and whatnot. He didn't have.
I'm sure you like Joe Garagiola.
I did. I enjoyed Garagiola. He brought a little color. He wasn't the best broadcaster, but I enjoyed the games. That stuff's okay. I didn't need the games doing the field.
Hey, but getting off that, the opening day is done. It's only one game. Let's not get excited. I know if the Yankees had lost to the Giants, you would want Aaron Boone to be fired immediately because they'd be getting off a slow start in your book. It's only one game.
I would not have
asked. Not a big deal. Now, Judge struck out 4 times, and Mac would want to know what is wrong with Judge. Should the Yankees, what is Judge declining as a player? Mac would, want to know that now. Is he declining? Is Judge now past his prime? Mac would be asking.
I love Mac, but he sometimes would fall into that, what happened today.
Mac would be happy, though, because, for me, he'd be happy because the quarterback of the future, Bailey Zappi, is on the Jet roster. So Mac would be happy for me.
Well,
I love Mac. I love the way we went at it.
It was. Listen, it was opening. I love Mac too, by the way. And I don't.
Definitely. Now there's a legend. Mac was a legend on this network. 100%. There's a legend on the network.
The network's named for him, and his picture up there above our heads all the time. So silhouette anyway is up there. It was opening day. We had that was a kind of a historic thing with a new network, I guess. ABS kicks off. We had our first challenges. I'm still not crazy about this, but I don't have an argument because the umpires are so.
I want to see my beef is I want to see boxing on my. Baseball on my TV set. Forget about boxing. Boxing's gone. The way they're doing things, but that's another story. I have Amazon Prime, but I can only get it in New York on my iPad for now. I haven't been able to figure out to get it on my TV. I don't like watching baseball on my iPad. I hate it.
Don't you have a smart TV? All you got to do is download the Amazon Prime app on your TV.
I got a big 60-inch set. I think it's a dumb TV, not a smart TV.
I'll drive down. It's going to cost you thousands, but I'll drive down and set up.
Yeah, I got to get one of my son-in-laws to look into it for me.
You got to be able to add the Prime.
Netflix I get on my TV, so I can watch the games on Netflix. I think it's important to get a game on TV because you want to be doing other things while TV's on. You look up between pitches and
Yeah, I often have the game on my iPad because my wife might want to be watching something else, right? So I watch a lot of games on my iPad. It's not as big a deal. I mean, I like it on the big screen. She'll go to bed. I watch the end of the game on the TV. So
But you have 6 screens going at once, right?
not with baseball. I mean, I'm out watching 6 baseball games at once. They're boring. Remember, they're boring, Jack. Why would I want to watch 6 baseball games? There was some interesting. Mets were off to a good start. Again, it's one game, but at least they win on opening day, which is a good thing. Score 11 runs, and they knocked Paul Skeens out of the game yesterday. So,
what do you think of your Paul Skeens? The guy I think is, along with Scooble, the best pitchers in baseball. You know, it's a toss-up who you want to say is better, and it happens. As great a pitcher as someone is, they have these days once in a while, and it just so happened with Skeens, and it might happen again a second or third time.
Yeah, Aaron Judge, 34 years old.
Aaron Judge is fine. He's going to have a great year.
Rick's telling you just adjust the rabbit ears on your TV. You might get the Yankee game. An interesting development yesterday that I didn't even know this was a record. Tyler McNeil didn't hit a home run yesterday, and that's significant because he'd hit home runs in 6 consecutive opening days for his teams that he's played on the last 6 years. That's kind of an interesting little record. That's something Mac would have found to come up with. I just caught this morning. Not that it's any significance, but I thought it was interesting to hit six years in a row.
You dig these records up, and I'm going to count to Justin Fields if he starts the season as the starting quarterback game 1 for the Kansas City Chiefs, because we don't know whether Mahomes is going to be back from an injury. Justin Fields would have set an NFL record his first 4 years. I mean, his first 4 teams he'd be starting an opening game for, something like that.
You were talking about
the Steelers, the Jets, and the Chiefs.
You were talking about overreactions, right, for one game. I got a prediction in these first week of baseball that we're going to hear lots of screaming about the We're going to hear lots of screaming about the WBC because now you got Paul Skeens didn't pitch well, Judge is struggling. Jackson Churio is out a month now for the Brewers. He went on the DL yesterday. There's nothing to this. They would have played in spring training anyway.
Look, well, you need a storyline to make one up. And I know in the New York area, at least the NFL, the big storyline, and any sport would be Ty Simpson now. Oh, he's moving up the board. He looks good in the combines. Nick Saban recommends him. Should the Jets flew in to see him, the executives. I hope the Jets don't screw this up by taking him actually at number 16.
Rick had a comment.
Individual trial. You don't need an individual trial. Rick, you have his game film. He hasn't played a lot of games in college. He hasn't played a lot of games. And the games he played the second half of the season, he was not good in. If you want to take in the 4th round, he won't be there in the 4th round. I can understand the Jets have 2 second-round picks. I wouldn't even take him with the second because you have a nice quarterback crop next year, and you have 3 number 1s in reserve for next year.
They look good.
I mean, you have Trinidad Chambliss coming out next year. If you get him, you have a Hall of Fame quarterback. You're going to get Ty Simpson might be okay. He might. I'm not totally giving up on him, but he's not worth, taking a flyer on this early.
Did you just say Trinidad Chambliss in the Hall of Fame in the same sentence?
It's going to be, yeah. Trinidad Chambliss is going to be great.
And you think we're drinking on Wednesday nights? Somebody's got to.
I'm telling you. I hope. Listen, it's his case going on because if he could come out this year, I know I have about to end the show here. I hope he's eligible for the NFL draft and can't play in college, just so he could prove my point sooner rather than later.
And I can't wait to say I told you so. So we'll have a lot to look forward to there. Thank you, Jack. Great hour, guys. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for contributing. Jack, I'll see you tomorrow morning with the debate show. Don't forget to miss that. I'll see you Sunday morning with the Stream of Consciousness. Don't forget Jack's book, Michael Jinks Spinks. The official biographer of Michael Spinks is Jack Hirsch. Let's not forget that important note. Guys, we'll see you later this weekend. Have a great Friday. Bye-bye.
Bye.